took a little longer than expected, but the Eagles have finalised their coaching staff after an extensive search. At the beginning of the offseason, the team had numerous roles to fill, needing coaches at wide receiver, defensive line, defensive back, and of course an offensive coordinator. The Birds started their hunt early and have finally finished the puzzle, so here is everything you need to know. But before we get into it though, guys, we are drafting you, yes you, with the 21st overall pick to be our shiny new wide receiver. We are slinging you up daily Eagles content, and we just need you to come down with that crucial subscribe touchdown in the end zone to send us to the playoffs. It'd be amazing to have you as part of this community, so hit subscribe, stick around, let's have some fun this offseason, and do not make me trade you to Dallas, alright? Catch it, subscribe, we'll be fine. Let's start off with one of the new additions, and that is Rich Scangarello, who I went over in a video yesterday. The Eagles won't be running with an offensive coordinator moving forward, instead opting to delegate the duties among several different individuals, with Rich Scangarello being one of them. To save repeating myself, here is everything you need to know about Rich Scangarello from yesterday's video, who spent last year as the Broncos offensive coordinator in a tale of two halves. The first was an offense filled with a lot of pre-snap motion, a lot of misdirection and counter plays and play action looks to really open up the playbook and try and keep defenses honest. Sexy. The other half was bad play calling that led to numerous players, including star running back Philip Lindsay and quarterback Joe Flacco, throwing him under the bus. Not so sexy. The good news though is that Scangarello wouldn't be expected to call plays, and prior to his stint in Denver, where the offense ranked 28th in yards per game, he spent 2 years as the QB coach in San Francisco and is of course a graduate of the Shanahan coaching tree. Now if Scangarello is brought in to essentially mentor Press Taylor, then this isn't a bad thing at all. You can definitely make the argument that the Broncos offense was held back by Flacco, and if his offensive philosophy really does bring so much mystery, then injecting and molding a coordinator makes sense here. Talking of Press Taylor, he gets a promotion to pass game coordinator and is famously associated with the Philly Special. As we mentioned in that video, his relationship with Carson Wentz is said to be a lot more romantic, and hopefully we'll even see shades of that in Amazon's All or Nothing, which releases tomorrow. But that's not necessarily a bad thing, and it's likely that Scangarello will be able to help him out in that regard as a former Shanahan disciple. Obviously, this is an internal move, so there are bound to be reasons for concern, especially after seeing Mike Groh's promotion go down like a lead balloon. The other thing to bear in mind, of course, is that it's not like Wentz took a significant step forward under Taylor. We still had a fumbling issue, and hopefully Scangarello's influence can help there as well. But it will be interesting to see how the passing game evolves with Taylor coordinating that aspect, especially if he was the man pushing for plays like the Philly Special. It makes you wonder what else he's got up his sleeve, and clearly the Eagles feel confident enough to give him that role and not go with an offensive coordinator. So I'm very intrigued to see how this pans out and what this means for the offense moving forward. Next up is Matt Burke, and as I reported earlier this week, Matt Burke is now the team's new defensive line coach, but he does get a bit of a boost as well, because he's now also the team's defensive run game coordinator, because yes, one of the league's most consistent run defenses since 2016 could suddenly need a coordinator. Excellent. In all seriousness, I really don't understand anything about this move, aside from the fact that Burke will know exactly what Schwartz wants out of his lineman and the best way to get it. It doesn't make the firing of Daniels any less confusing, but if it takes responsibility away from Schwartz and allows him to focus on tweaking the secondary, then I fully get the motive. If it helps younger players key in on assignments they otherwise wouldn't, great. But those are big ifs, and Burke, in my mind at least, has been largely unproven. The defense he coached in Miami was a train wreck. While he's followed Schwartz everywhere he's been pretty much, we haven't really seen what he can do in Philadelphia. So who knows, this could be a good move. He may get the best out of the defensive line, and it's nice that the team do have someone specifically there to key in on the run game. Is it needed though? I don't know, only time will tell. Maybe it's going to help a linebacker corps that was so bad at tackling really take a step up in their development, or maybe it's going to help the corners in run support. That is very wishful thinking, but it is what it is, and hopefully, this will be a move that does benefit the Eagles, take some weight off the shoulders of Jim Schwartz, and allows this defense to just broaden its horizons a bit, and more resources to be dedicated to areas of need. In contrary to Burke's position, I think that the hiring of Marken Manuel may be the best of the bunch. If you haven't seen my video on the hiring of Manuel, don't worry, here's the best bits and everything you need to know from it. The new coach is set to be Markond Manuel. He was let go after the 2018 season as the Falcons defensive coordinator. He was with Atlanta for 4 seasons, 2 of which as the secondary coach and 2 as the defensive coordinator. He was regarded as an up-and-coming assistant coach that many thought could end up being a head coach one day, being called names like the Sean McVay of the defense. Manuel has been heavily credited with the development of names like Keanu Neal, who is a rising star at the safety position. Manuel's firing in 2018 did spark some outrage among Atlanta fans who felt like he was a scapegoat for the struggles of a defense that was largely injured and for the play calling from a game plan that was of course developed by head coach Dan Quinn. Despite the struggles of the defense in 2018, the young corners seemed to develop nicely under his teaching. Manuel developed a reputation as someone that could connect with his players and was getting the best out of them. Prior to his time with the Falcons, he spent 2012 to 2014 as an assistant special teams coach, defensive assistant and assistant secondary coach. He was also heavily involved with the coaching and development of the Legion of Boom down in Seattle. Before jumping to that ship though, he was an 8-year pro playing for 6 different teams, with his last stint very notably being a 9-game tenure for the Detroit Lions, head coached by none other than Jim Schwartz. Now, Markond is tasked with a very difficult job, which is getting the most out of a secondary that could be facing a rebuild. Whether it's names like Christian Fulton or free agent Byron Jones, there's bound to be some turnover at this position, but at its core, it's very young, it's underdeveloped, and it's very raw. You've got ball hawks in Rasul Douglas, you've got versatility in Avonte Maddox, and you arguably have lockdown potential in Sidney Jones. None of that was harnessed under Corey Undlin, arguably, and I think it's about time that this scheme versus talent situation comes to an end. If it really is down to lack of talent, instead of making square pegs fit round holes, you shave them, you make them fit, you mold the players to get the best out of those circles, you mold that scheme to fit the pegs as well. It has to be work done on both sides of the ball, and I think Markond is a great name here. When you look at names like DeMonte Kazee, who somehow had 7 interceptions in 16 games, Isaiah Oliver, who was a draft crush of mine, had an interception and 7 passes broken up in 2018. You can see why the Eagles went down this road. This is someone that can squeeze every last drop of juice out of this secondary. Even Brian Poole, who is a potential free agent target for the Eagles, had 6 passes defense and 3 interceptions that year. So you can fully understand why the Eagles are all in. Not only could this lure Brian Poole back to work under a defensive backs coach, but this is someone that has a reputation for getting the most out of younger players, for helping to mold them, and that's exactly what this secondary needs. Next up, the Eagles have a new wide receiver coach, and that man is Aaron Moorhead out of Vanderbilt. He's had 3 different stints at the collegiate level, one with Texas Tech and another with Auburn. And for context, here's how the leading receiver fared in each team he's positionally coached the receivers. As you can see, he's worked with names such as Kalijah Lipscomb, Christian Kirk, and Sammy Coates, not to mention former draft picks Josh Reynolds and Ricky Seals-Jones. And you can definitely see a consistent trend of a lot of touchdowns and a lot of production. The most important thing here is that the Eagles finally find some stability at the position. They've had a different wide receiver coach in each of their last 5 seasons, and it's safe to say that it's probably impacted the growth of names like Nelson Agholor, Matt Collins, or any wideout that's even been on the team for that matter. Wide receiver position has come under fire for so long now that it's absolutely imperative the Eagles establish a coach who can develop the players over a long period of time, as opposed to bringing in constant new ways of doing things along with different aims and expectations. Another name added to the offensive coaching staff is Andrew Briner, a former Indianapolis Colt himself. He most recently coordinated Mississippi State's passing game, where names like Tommy Stevens did alright under his guidance, but what's really interesting to note, as I pointed out recently, that he helped Nick Fitzgerald lead the FBS in 100 plus rushing yard games by quarterbacks. And we know the Eagles have an emphasis on getting Wentz into open space, and perhaps his kind of mentality could only aid that new plan. It appears as though the Eagles are adopting a coordinator by committee approach, and it's not a bad move, especially if they couldn't bring in the big name they wanted. But is it the right move? If you take what Brian has achieved with the constant play action and misdirection that we see under Scangarello, and the creativity from what we've seen in a very limited dose out of Press Taylor, I think it's safe to say the Eagles have the right individuals, and that's far more important than finding one man with the wrong job title, as I wrote in an article earlier today. I think with all of this input, with so much ideology and so much effort to get the quarterback into open space, to use new ideas to get players open. I'm excited to see what the offense can do. TJ Paganetti is a man also getting a promotion, entering his 4th year on the Eagles coaching staff. He originally rejoined the team in 2017 as an offensive quality control assistant / assistant offensive line coach before earning a promotion to assistant running backs coach in 2019. Between his arrival in 2013 and that return, he actually went to Oregon, now it makes sense, as a graduate assistant and linebackers coach for 2 more years. His progression has been positive, and learning under Jeff Stoutland can only bring further development to a bright young coach. Finally, there's Dino Vasso, and it looks as though the Eagles' offense isn't the only area getting a makeover, with Vasso coming on board as an assistant coordinator. Vasso was formerly the team's assistant secondary coach during that iconic Super Bowl winning campaign, one where the Eagles actually produced, believe it or not, 31 takeaways and the fewest touchdowns allowed by an Eagles team since 2008. Where has that production gone? Vasso has spent most of his time in his career working with the secondary, even dating back to his days in Kansas City, and with a defensive run game coordinator as well, it appears as though the Eagles are placing a real emphasis on adding extra eyes into the mix and sharing responsibility. Perhaps there are significant areas the team wish to focus on, and they deem the best way in doing it is to assign new assistant coaches to those areas. It's promising that there's a real desire to improve and to add a more rigid structure in a bid to ensure stability, and at the end of the day, that's what a team who's faced this much adversity, this much white noise and this much turmoil through the years really needs right now. What do you think of the moves, guys? Let me know down in the comments below. Thank you for giving me 11 minutes of your evening. I hope you have a fantastic weekend. We've got a first mock draft coming out tomorrow night, so stick around for that. From myself, Liam Jenkins, I'll see you soon.